Hello, folks. Nick Vargas here with the LGBT Plus Center Virtual Center. And we have two special guests today. We have, of course, beloved drag queen Priscilla McNamara, who you all know and love and have seen at many events. And all the way tuning in from San Francisco, we have the Juanita More. Welcome to both of you. First off, I want to start by congratulating Juanita on being crowned Empress of San Francisco. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's super exciting.
So that was just this last weekend, correct?
Yes.
And I know there's a process of running. You're out there getting votes. You're doing community service. What was that like for you to go through that process and then to win?
Super exciting. Number one, let's look a little bit at the Imperial Court of San Francisco, just to sort of get a good start on it. It's been around since 1965 and was created by Jose Sarria, who was really a trailblazing civil rights activist of the time. And Jose was really good at creating community and then using community to create better things for everyone and supporting each other. So that's how the court started and why it started. And it's now into its 56th year, which is amazing. And I have been asked in the past to run for Empress, and I've honestly looked at their schedules and I've been like, I cannot fit that into my schedule. But for some reason, so this past summer during COVID, I got to watch 50 Years of Fabulous, which is the documentary about the Imperial Council of San Francisco. And it was filmed at their 50th year. And it's such a beautiful film in how it shows its beginnings and its triumphs, its peaks, and then shows sort of where it's, started to fizzle a little bit. And at the end, I really felt like now was the time for me to step up and help shine a brighter light on the organization and hopefully take it, into a more modern direction. And of course, raise money for them and all those things, which they give back to the community. The entire board that is part of the organization, it's a nonprofit 501(c)(3), all volunteers, which is amazing. There's not many nonprofit organizations where the entire team is just volunteers. So that's super exciting. So I did decide to run. And of course I spoke to my close queer family here, and everyone was excited and agreed that it was time to do this. So I was happy to do it, and I'm happy to take on the role and wear the crown.
I'm sure you will wear it well. So IDC, we have a local chapter in Fresno, and I know they do a lot of great work in Fresno. And I think there was even talk about having one here in Visalia, but I don't believe that ever got off the ground, which is too bad. It's an organization that I really respect. And I know in San Francisco, it was a big deal. I had friends who would run for different positions, and it was always a big to-do in the city. So
well, we're the mother court. So and there's courts in Canada, Mexico, and San Francisco, and throughout the US. So Fresno is one of the places that I want to come visit when they have their coronation. So hopefully that will happen. But yeah, this is the home of it, the birth of it. So I'm excited about it.
Wonderful. So from what I know of you, you have a heart for community and for serving. How did you tell us a little bit about your life and how you got into what you do?
People have asked me that before, and so I try to think back when I was a little kid and what I was doing. I was organizing everyone as little kids. I was the one organizing, okay, let's play, everybody do this group thing, or let's work on this art project together. That was me as a little kid. And as I grew up, I came to understand that I see life as though I was a director of a movie. Like that's how I see everything. So I see its beginnings and ends, and I want everything to work. So when I started doing drag almost 30 years ago, I realized the power that a drag queen has in public and the attention. And I didn't want to turn around and just waste that. I wanted to use it for good. And immediately started doing nonprofit events and raising money for organizations that I thought were important in my community. So I've always been someone who has brought people together. I've always been someone who can see potential in people, and I like to inspire them to be their best. I've just been that person. I think that way. I can't not control myself from thinking like that. I hear people sometimes tell me about their job and how they hate it. And like, I'm looking at them, and I'm like, oh my God, but you're so good at doing this other thing. Why aren't you doing that? And they're like, well, but that's what I do for fun. And I'm like, well, that's what you should be doing for work and making money at is your fun thing. So yeah, so I've always been someone who's brought people together, and I'm really happy about that.
That's wonderful. I know Priscilla must have some questions, some drag questions or some drag talk for you. Priscilla, what do you want to ask Juanita More?
So one big question that comes to mind, because you brought up that you've been doing drag for almost or about 30 years of drag, which is incredible because I'm barely hitting my 10 year and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have another 20 to go. But one question I have for you, and I love to ask every queen this, but what inspired you to do drag? Like what really pushed you to go in the avenue of being a drag queen?
That's a great question. So, I came out in high school and I came out in the East Bay and grew up being a queer kid in San Francisco as a teenager. And at that time, when I was around drag queens, I was just petrified of them. They were monstrous. They were, they were finger pointing and they were catty and they were yelling at people and all that. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be around that. I don't want to be around that. So to be honest, like as a young queer kid, I wasn't interested in drag. I was interested in the arts and was doing artistic things at that time. And I was living in San Francisco and decided to move to New York. This is probably 87. So now you have to go back to 1983 when I had moved to the Castro. So I moved into the Castro, one block away from the Castro at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic. And so I was there from 83 until 87. So between 83 and 87, I'm going to New York on vacation once a year or twice a year. And around 86, starting to think, maybe I want to move to New York. Because being in San Francisco to me wasn't like leaving home. It was my backyard, right? So I have this crazy notion that I'm gonna run away to New York and leave the AIDS epidemic behind me, which wasn't true because I ended up moving one block away from the West Side Highway where they were filming Paris is Burning and one block away from Christopher Street. So I moved right back into the center of everything. That's where I first encountered drag that I thought was so inspiring. Still didn't want to do it, but I became friends with so many amazing drag queens. So I started going to Boy Bar in New York in the late 80s. And that's where I met Juanita More, who's my best friend, who became my drag mother. And I was so in love with all the girls on stage there. Juanita More and I now laugh, and she considers me the first More boy. Because after I started doing drag, I of course had all these More boys who were carrying my bags and taking me. Well, that's what I was doing for Juanita More in 87, 88, and 89, right? So Juanita More decides to come to San Francisco when I moved back. I moved back in 90, and in late 91 or early 92, she comes out here for a 2-week visit, and it was right around Halloween. And I said, oh my God, you have to put me in drag. Like, I just want to do it once. And that, and literally, like, she looked at me and she says, oh my God, can I please have one friend that is not a drag queen? Like, you have been my gay friend for 3 years. Like, and I was like, no, let's do it. And I stumbled around the apartment in Hills for a week. And then that night she started putting on my makeup and she's like, oh my God, you're going to be so pretty. She's just like, oh fuck, And as soon as I got in drag, like, Juanita just turned on. And I walked out of the house as though I'd been walking in Hills forever. I came back home. She didn't go out with me that night, but I came back home that night and I was like, I'm going out tomorrow night again. So just get ready to put me in drag. And then I just didn't stop.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with it in another way. It also became another super creative outlet for me. And I haven't stopped.
See, that is amazing. That is something that I can relate to, because when I first started doing drag, I never envisioned or pictured myself doing it 10 years or longer than that. I've always seen it as like a short-term thing, something that's gonna, Drag Race is gonna take over, it's gonna phase out, they're all gonna think about these high corporated queens, and the little local queens are just gonna be forgotten about.
Right.
That's what my envision was. But now, being where I am now, I'm like, oh my gosh, drag is going to be around forever. Like, we need drag everywhere. Like, it just needs to be incorporated in everything, because it's just a beautiful art form. But one question that I also had for you, and this is one thing that I ask a lot of queens as well, is, being now in the present, at this present moment, what would you tell yourself back in 83 or, in the early 90s when you first started doing drag? What would you tell yourself, then to now? What would you educate them on? What would you give them the heads up on as far as, your drag career and what you've encountered?
I do remember that first year of me being in drag, and of course it was just reckless. It was me going out and partying and smoking and drinking and like just having just a blast and not looking at it in another way. It was towards the end of that first year that I, like I said earlier, that I saw that people were really paying attention. I had a lot of friends here already. I'd lived here for a long time, that people that loved me, respected me. So I think to really understand from the start what power it possesses, and to be proud of it and to put it to good use. I think that's the most important thing.
Awesome. And I feel you on that, because me being in a very rural, conservative area, every time I go to San Francisco, I feel like I'm at home, because I could just be so free. I could literally walk to Starbucks and drag, and I won't even have a blink of an eye. Like, I love that feeling. Absolutely adore it. Here, not so much. It's very conservative. But if you had one piece of advice for a queen like myself, doing it for 10 years and above, what guidance would you tell me to kind of keep that baton going and to inspire others? Because there's queens around here that are willing to do the club gig, willing to do the performance lip sync number, but when it comes to actual community work, giving back to their community and doing things that are outside of the the club, what advice or what suggestions could you give me as a drag queen, as far as how do I continue pushing the envelope amongst my fellow sisters? Because I feel like I'm doing great, but I feel there could be more. And no pun intended, Juanita. No pun intended, honey.
No, of course. There, with the internet drag being so popular, there has become a big, huge community of motherless drag queens. And having a drag mother is so important, because that is someone to guide you, someone with history of drag. And I was lucky that I had Glamour More in my life, who really had all that knowledge and stuff, and to do the right thing. So I think to create community with your sisters and to inspire them with history is the most important thing to me. That's how we learn to move forward, and what we grow from and what we move on to the next thing with is our history. So that's the most important part of it.
So I want to emphasize, the power of drag to gain attention and to benefit the community. It's something that, as a young queer person, I didn't quite realize. I was scared of the drag queens too when I was like 18, 19. And now I love drag queens, and especially, ones like you two, who put so much attention on things that need attention. And specifically what I wanted to talk about is housing. So, when I lived in San Francisco, housing was hard to come by. It was, apartments were renting but sight unseen. You had to know somebody to find a space to live, people 3 to a 1-bedroom apartment. And I remember when Juanita's list came out, and I thought, this is such a great idea to put queer community in contact with each other. How did that idea come about, Juanita?
I was, I was out, I was throwing parties all the time, and I would be in a nightclub and someone would talk to me and say, in this year, oh, my roommate's moving out, I need to find a new roommate, and let me know if you know of anybody that needs a room. And then they'd walk away, and then an hour later somebody would come over in this year and go, hey, I need to find a room, like we're all leaving our apartments. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, that other person is like over there, let me try to connect you. But that was happening a lot. It was happening to me all the time, and I couldn't keep track of everyone. So I said, okay, I got to figure out how to do this and use Facebook as a platform to do it. So that's when I started the housing group on Facebook, and it immediately took off. It took off from the start. We're now at 10,000 plus people who are on there either offering housing or seeking housing. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it blew up real quick. And so housing is something that we're struggling with down here as well. And our real estate market is booming, especially from COVID. I think what we've heard is that people from larger areas are moving to our area because you can buy a house here for $200,000.
No, yeah.
Buy it. And so they're bringing cash, and we're seeing that rooms are harder to come by. And like Priscilla mentioned, our area isn't so friendly to queer people. So there's that extra hurdle that, people might have to go through too. So I thought, why don't we do something like Juanita's list? And, I didn't just want it to be like the source list, or nobody would pay attention to Nick's list. But Priscilla's been here engaged in the community, for a decade or longer. And people listen to Priscilla, and she's way more popular than any of us are. So I thought she would be a great spokesperson for this. And so we created Priscilla's list.
Nice. And it's on Facebook?
It's on Facebook. And I sent you an invitation to your Facebook email, and you can check it out. So as sort of a response, because I get a request at least every other week from somebody looking for a room. And maybe every few months, there's somebody who, like, I have a room to rent,
right?
Or I'm looking for a roommate. And very much like you, it just gets a lot to hold in your head. And we had a bulletin board in the source for this too. But right now with COVID, we're not open. So I thought, you know what, let's put it online and see how that works. And we've already started to see some conversations happening there, people looking for roommates. Today, there was a posting for a room in an LGBTQ household. Nice. So it's starting to get that traction. So what I would just love to hear from you, like, what are some of the success stories that you've had with Juanita's list?
I mean, besides the amount of people that have joined and that have connected with other queer people to find fair housing, I think one of the most exciting and important parts about it that has to happen, Priscilla, you got to learn this, you need to have help moderating the group. That's going to help you focus on a really certain part of it. Now, as big as the group is for me, I'm getting realtors that are trying to sneak in. I'm getting spam people that want to go in there and just write whatever. And also to follow the guidelines of your, your city's guidelines on housing, and to post them in there as a thing. So, we have the renters groups here in San Francisco. There's been housing COVID guidelines that have been released here in San Francisco. There's rules about discrimination in housing that you need to post and make everyone super aware of. You need to be super clear about the fairness that the group is about. I think that's the most important thing, is to be super clear on the rules of how people can find housing that are, legitimate rules that the government's putting out also, right? I mean, as a person that I'm representing that group, I have to do that, and I have to moderate it. And there's a lot of conversations that happen in the group. But I'm super excited that and especially during COVID, we saw a ton of rooms open up because a ton of people left. We saw a ton of people move to new housing because they found cheaper housing because of the list. So it really got super active during last year. And I think people are settling into some great places at the moment.
So you touched on like a lot of the things to do, and I've read some of your posts about, follow the federal guidelines on housing, maybe describe this is the type of household we are and maybe see if it's a fit. I think that's a great way to put it too. Have you had any big troubles or things that have come out of it that you're like, gosh, I wish, this hadn't happened in my group? Anything that
Well, I mean, it is a public platform and it is social media. So people
Always remember that.
Yes, people feel sometimes the need to say whatever they need to say on a platform. And one of the things that I noticed that was bothering me, and we've addressed it, is there's sometimes there's infighting, and there's people who just say, oh, that room's too expensive. And I look at it in a way of like, if you are not looking for housing or do not need housing, then you do not need to comment on someone else's housing situation. Like, there's places for everyone. There's some people that can afford more. There are some people that need to, so it just seems to fall into those things. But it's hard to control people and their responses to things on the internet across the board.
Yeah, and that's in any social media platform. That goes for everything.
But I heard you posted, Juanita, that you have your chancla.
So. I know. I did post about my chancla recently. I told everybody they had to calm down with the commenting, and that I had my chancla in my hand. Boy, that got a lot of comments.
No, I love that post. So we're getting close to our time here for Queer Goggles. What topics would you like to talk about, Juanita? What are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm working on Pride. San Francisco is getting set to open up a lot more in the middle of Pride Month, in the middle of June. So Pride Sunday is at the end of June. And I've been having an annual party on Pride for 18 years. So I've raised probably about over $600,000 for different organizations locally. And of course, everyone has, been locked up. We all miss our friends. We all miss our family. And I've been getting asked, are you having your party? You're having your party? And I'm like, we got to wait. We got to see what the city's going to be able to do, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that San Francisco's actually been doing super great under COVID guidance, and I'm planning a party, and it's going to happen, and it's going to happen under whatever guidelines the city says I need to have the party with. If you need to show your vaccine card, you need to show your vaccine card. That's how you're getting in. But there will be an event. It will benefit an organization here in the city. And I'm 3 months late in starting to plan it. So that's been this week, trust me. It's been my entire week. So that's the next thing that I'm working on at the moment. And of course, I'm sure I'm going to have 1 million Imperial Empress students to take over.
Oh yes, most definitely. Coming from a best friend, Leilani Price, when she was Empress, here in Fresno, let me tell you, just seeing the duties and the ins and outs and the tasks and just the workload, I'm like, wow, you guys need a village for the Empress role. Like there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, it takes a village. I mean, I'm glad I got a big support system here. So I already have,
most definitely.
I've enlisted everyone to get jumping on this event and start fundraising, and we're going for it. It's going to happen in some form.
Well, we cannot wait to see it. Let me tell you, because the annual Juanita More party, that is one that's definitely missed, and it was
come up for it.
Oh yeah, well, I went to Pride 2019. I did see you, I seen Honey, I seen everybody, over there at the Grand Festival and the party as well. But again, I was so sad we missed it last year, due to everything going on. But I'm so grateful to hear that you guys are kicking it right back up again. Like time has not even lapsed. So vaccine card or not, it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. And last year, instead of doing the Pride Party because I couldn't, I ended up partnering with Alex UN and we did the People's March. And what we did was, I mean, it was in the middle of so much racial stuff happening in the country that we were all, and I'm still furious about. So we did a People's March and had a march and rally. We started the march on Polk Street, which was the original path of where the original parade was, that started in the late 60s. So we did that march there, and then we had a rally at Civic Center. We had amazing speakers, we had music, and it was just so many people came up to me after and said that felt like Pride again. It felt like we were doing something with a purpose. So so I'm super excited. That is also going to happen again in some form, and I'm working on that too.
Well, there you go. She's lined up for all these tasks and she's doing all the work. I'm so happy that we've gotten the time to like sit down and talk to you. You have so many things going on, but once everything starts getting settled in, I cannot wait to go up to San Francisco and see you again. Because the last time I seen you was at Powerhouse. And it was one of those pageant nights. Yeah, it was one of those pageant nights. So it was so much fun. It was a grand old time. So I cannot wait to be able to do that again with you and to be able to catch up in person. And hopefully I could see you at one of these coronations, let me tell you. Because Fresno's is coming up, if I'm not mistaken.
And I'm coming to Fresno, so that's going to happen.
Oh yeah, well, you know, Visalia is just 45 minutes south.
Just 45 minutes away? Okay.
Just a little bit away. Give you a tour of the source and everything.
Love that.
Thank you, Juanita More, for being our guest today. A big congratulations on your being elected Empress of San Francisco. There are anything we can do to support you here at The Source. Let us know if there's things you want us to push out on our social. We have over 16,000 followers in San Francisco too, in the Bay Area.
Amazing.
So, and thank you, Priscilla, for joining us. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, with that, folks, we're going to call it a wrap here on Queer Goggles. Everybody stay safe. Till next time.